Lady Jane Grey is known as the 9 Days Queen and currently holds the title for the shortest reigning monarch in history. She was the great-granddaughter of Henry VII and, at the age of 10, was introduced into the house of Catherine Parr, where her Protestant beliefs were strengthened. Jane Grey never sought out power. She had no intentions of ever taking the crown until it was thrust upon her. It was those around her who desired the power of the throne and used her as a pawn in their very deadly chess game to achieve it. Originally, her parents planned for her to marry King Edward VI and so raised her with a strong education in hopes to impress His Majesty. When her father was named the Duke of Suffolk, Jane Grey began to appear in court. Here, she was introduced to the Duke of Northumberland, regent to the king, and arguably the most powerful man in the country. Northumberland was a dirty piece of work and knew when the king died, his days in court would be over. In order to clasp onto his power, he decided the best option would be to put his own family on the throne. As fifth in line to the throne and a firm Protestant, Jane Grey was the perfect way for Northumberland to cling on to his place in court. Against her wishes, she was forced to marry his son, and her road to the crown was unknowingly underway. When it became clear the king was dying, Northumberland pushed and pushed to make sure the crown was passed on to his new daughter-in-law, Jane Grey, and not the king's half-sister, Mary, who was first in line to receive it. Northumberland had a lot of persuasion over the young, dying king, and claimed Jane Grey should be the next queen, so the throne wouldn't be passed to a Catholic heir. He was easily persuaded. The king died, and 4 days later, Jane Grey was proclaimed queen, much to the dismay of Mary and Jane Grey herself. Mary was very popular and had a lot of support in her claim to the throne. Jane Grey went about her queenly duties, while Mary managed to raise an army of support. Eventually, even Jane Grey's father, who had been pushing for his daughter's claim to power, publicly announced his support for Mary Tudor in a bid to save his own neck when Mary inevitably took over as monarch. He persuaded his daughter to relinquish her claim to the crown, which she willingly did, and by doing so, he was pardoned. However, when Mary took over as queen, Jane and her husband were tried for high treason, of which they were found guilty and sentenced to death. Queen Mary really didn't want to kill Lady Jane Grey though, so her execution was suspended and she was allowed to remain in the Tower where she could do as she pleased. The Duke of Northumberland did not receive the same courtesy and was swiftly beheaded. But once more, her father made a push for power and joined a rebellion against the Queen Mary. Jane Grey was beheaded for his crimes, along with her husband, as they posed too much of a threat to the crown. 2 days later, her father followed her to the chopping block. She was only 16 when she died, her fate sealed by those whose only interest was power. Mary went on to become known as Bloody Mary. She killed over 300 Protestants in her 5-year reign. If you happen to live in the Leicestershire area of England, you can still see the ruins of Lady Jane Grey's home, where she was born and raised. Just take a trip to Bradgate Park.